The most important part of astrotheology and syncretism, which is what I'm doing, syncretism shows how everything, all the theologies, the philosophies, the religions, the sciences, they are all one. And the people from the Renaissance were doing this. Marsilio Ficino, Giovanni Pico della Mirandola, Giordano Bruno, all these guys. You see, what you find when you look at the ancient texts, you find that the theme is exactly the same. And especially to the ones who have insight, the exoteric knowers, rather than the exoteric believers. You see, they've been kept in the dark, in the lurch. But the secret of secrets is the grand arcanum, which is hiding in these texts. It's the magnum opus that the philosopher has been looking for, the elixir of life, etc. It all has to do with the microcosm. Of course, what else could it be? In the Bible is the story of the microcosm of the man and how man was created. It's a literary masterpiece. But in the Bible, there is only one story, and that is the story of the creation of man, and how man is the temple of what they call God, or the temple of Solomon. Solomon's temple was not built with hammer or saw, or the sound of hammer or saw. The temple is the body, you see, and this is how it works. This is how the temple is built. It's built on the principle of 12, because the universe is built on 12. Everything the universe does, it does through the number 12. 12 is the completeness of its cycles, you see. The human body must correspond to the universe because man is the measure of the universe. The ancients knew that there was a circle in the sky, and that circle was traversed by the 7 wanderers, the sun and the moon, the 2 luminaries, and the 5 visible planets, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn. And these 7 regulated that path in the sky that they blazed, called the ecliptic. The ecliptic is the extension of the equator of the Earth. And they got that line of 360 degrees and they segmented it into 30 degrees because they knew that that's how the universe gets things done. It does things in 12s. And we have to understand numerology and the power of the numbers. What does 1 mean? What does 2 mean? What does 3 mean? Now, I'll get back to that. But what they did, the ancients, is they knew that this Temple of Solomon was made of 12 parts, and the parts are these. Aries, the ram, is at the top of the head. Everything starts with Aries in this great science, the great science of astrology. Aries is the first, the number 1. Then there's Taurus, number 2. And those 2 houses or signs of the zodiac are in the head. Aries is at the top of the head and it corresponds with the cerebrum, and Taurus is at the bottom of the head and the neck and it corresponds with the cerebellum. So you have the higher mind or the higher brain, and you have the lower mind or the lower brain. Now we'll get back to the meanings of those words, cerebrum and cerebellum, because hiding in those 2 words is the word Israel. Israel is in your head and it consists of the 2 brains, the cerebrum and the cerebellum. Okay, so we'll get back to that. But in astrology, these 2 portions were attributed to Aries, the lamb, and Taurus, the bull. Now, in order, descending from the top of the head, in order, after Taurus you have Gemini, the 2 arms. Cancer is next, the breast. Leo is next, the heart. Then below that is Virgo, the belly. Below that is Libra, the 2 kidneys, the scales of balance, the 2 kidneys. So here you have the kidneys representing the scales of Libra. Below that, Scorpio, the generative area. Below that, Sagittarius, the hips, because hips comes from hippo, the horse, Sagittarius. Below that you have Capricorn, the knees, the kneecaps. Below that you have Aquarius. And then the final part of this temple are the 2 fish, Pisces. Now, Josephus, Philo, Judaeus, all of these great Jewish scholars from thousands of years ago tell you that that is how Solomon's temple was made. It was made in 12s. There were 12 loaves of bread Rome came to literalize them, to pin them down into history, you know, so to speak. And of course, later on, Eusebius put his touches on it. Then later on, you've got Francis Bacon with the King James Version. The Jesuits were also cooking the books on the continent. And of course, now you've got some very, very wealthy elite families that are also cooking the history books. So it's happening all the time. And it did begin with the Flavians. It absolutely did. And they put their touches. Justinian also did a lot of damage. His wife had reincarnation removed from the Bible in the year 530 something. And so they've been at it because when you doctor the books and you change their true message and you overlay it with historical facts and things to blur out the true beautiful message that is at the bottom of it, you do that for control so that the people do not know the true riches of the wisdom that's in these scriptures. And I'm uncovering those true riches that are in the Bible. And you have to understand that the Bible is the greatest astrological treatise in the history of this planet. It is the one and only. It's astrology at its best.
Hi, I'd like to show you how something as simple as a little sine wave like this can explain much of the physics and chemistry and all the sciences put together. With this you can explain the myths, the legends, the fairy tales and Bibles and epic poems of every culture under the sun. With this you can acquire an abundance of spiritual wisdom and knowledge and information about the universe. You can learn knowledge and wisdom about how to heal yourself. With this sine wave, you can know where we have come from in history, where we are presently, and where we are going. It also can reveal a lot about what's going to happen in 2012. With this sine wave, I would like to show you how most of the enigmas and puzzles and perplexing things of this world can be explained. Now, in order to do so, I'd like to point your attention to the sine wave as it is on a map of the Earth. And here it is. There's the sine wave. You will have seen it many times if you studied geography. And as you see, there is an equator which divides the two hemispheres, the north and the south. And you see the sine wave reaching up 23.5 degrees to the north of the equator, reaching the Tropic of Cancer. Then the sun descends down into winter, down to the Tropic of Capricorn, 23.5 degrees below the equator, and then journeys back upward to the equinox on March the 21st. Now, I'd like to show you the same sine wave on a more modern map. Here we have the equator separating the northern hemisphere from the southern hemisphere. And you'll notice the 12 segments that the Earth has been divided into. And you'll notice the sine wave as the sine wave goes up to the Tropic of Cancer, and these countries in the northern hemisphere enjoy their summer. Then as the sine wave goes down to the Tropic of Capricorn, these countries are experiencing winter, and the southern hemisphere is enjoying summer. This is the same sine wave, only the backdrop is the stars of the heavens. In other words, this is the dome of the heavens and all the 48 constellations. Notice again the sine wave, which is the ecliptic of the sun and the galactic equator. And here are the 12 segments. And those 12 segments are Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, Virgo, Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius, Capricorn, Aquarius, and Pisces. And these 12 divisions are the 12 signs of the zodiac. So, we see where the sine wave is in the heavens, we see where the sine wave is on the Earth. Now I'd like to draw a very simple graph on the whiteboard to show how we can tie this sine wave in with many other fractals of this particular sine wave. Here we have the Earth, and that's the equator. Here is the Tropic of Cancer. Here is the Tropic of Capricorn. And this is the sun's path, annually. Spring, summer, autumn and winter. Now, the moon does something similar. The sun is seen to be waxing as it goes to the longest day, and then it's waning when it goes to the shortest day. The moon does exactly the same thing. New moon, waxing, full moon, waning, new moon. So the solar cycle mimics the lunar cycle. In fact, pay close attention to the quarter moon. As we bring the sine wave back around into itself and make a circular graph, we have the sun on December the 21st climbing and waxing, reaching the highest, the longest day that would correspond to the moon at full. And these are the equinoxes correspond to quarter moon waxing, quarter moon waning. Now, the ancients taught us that the human being is also part of this cycle. In fact, March the 21st represents Aries, Taurus, Gemini. Aries, Taurus, Gemini. The spring, the top part of the body. Cancer, Leo, Virgo. Cancer, Leo, Virgo. Most of the torso. Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius. Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius. So we see the moon, we see that humans, we see the summer and the winter cycle, the yearly cycle, and also the daily cycle. The sine wave goes through everything in the universe, from subatomic particles to galaxy clusters. This is the science of as above, so below. This is the science of man, know thyself. And what better wisdom can there be? To know nature, how it works and how we relate to nature. So I would like to share this wisdom with you, and I would like to encourage people to have a look at my YouTube site, which is called Mr.Astrotheology. And there are an abundance of videos. And I go into depth. I go into great depth into these cycles and show how knowing this is of great benefit to us. We can heal ourselves with this wisdom and this knowledge. We can explain all the myths and legends and fairy tales with this sine wave and these cycles. We can learn about the future, where we're going, where we've been, where we are at present. This cycle can give us an abundance of wisdom and impart a lot of insight to us to help us in our daily life. What I'm offering is the key to understanding all these things, and the wisdom, the abundance of wisdom that you will acquire from studying this cycle of nature, and you will lift the veil of Isis. All the characters are the same people, the same entities. Those entities are always the most fundamental objects of the solar system. They are the characters. The characters that turn up in every myth, every legend, and every nursery rhyme, and every great Bible or Gospel, there they are. There's Helios, That's the Egyptians called Helios Atum. We call it atom. Same word, because it is an atom. An atom has an electric light core, and then it has magnetic bodies called electrons floating around it. As you will see in the myths of the Greeks and in the Bible, these characters always turn up. The main characters are always the sun and the moon, which goes around our earth. The moon is not there. You can't see that floating around the earth, but remember, it's not in this picture, but it's there, and it's one of the seven. They are the seven orbs in the sky that our eyes can see, the components of our atom. In Egypt, these were called the cosmocrators. This is the demiurge. When Christians talk about their God, it's this God, the maker, the former of physical bodies. It's not the Ein Sof, the prime source, the prime creator, which dwells in the ether, which has no definition. In the Greek myths, that's Helios, that's Hermes, Aphrodite, Venus. Mars is Ares, that's Zeus, the god of thunder, he's the boss, and he overtook Kronos, Saturn, as the boss. He's been ruling in the age of Pisces for 2,000 years. Jupiter. The Jews know him as Jehovah. The Catholic Church calls him Peter, Jew-Peter. So the Church of Peter at Rome is the Church of Jupiter. But don't be confused, because it's also the Church of Christ. And I'll show you that. That's Christ. And it's also the Church of Saturn. Okay? They've done this deliberately. They say they're Christian. It's not Christian. It's a Saturnian church. Hot. He's the hottest boy in the solar system. He's the coldest of the seven that we see. Okay? So there's this, they are considered as twin brothers, Jesus and Satan. Saturn is Satan. And its church is the Latin church, the Church of Saturn. That's why they wear black. It's the Grim Reaper. And this hero, of course he's the hero, because without this sun in the solar system, we get to perish in an instant. He's our saviour. And as the Bible says, he's coming in the clouds. Every eye will see him. I am the light of the world. And those four scriptures that describe God in the Bible, God is love, John 4:8, God is light. Well, I wonder whether they knew what they were talking about when they said that. God is a blazing fire in Hebrews. Wonder what they were talking about when they said that. And how many Christians think about that? God is a blazing fire in the Bible. Jesus is specifically, that's the name of the sun. Just like the moon is called Luna. It's funny how people have not been taught to name the sun. The sun. It's got a name. In Hebrew it's Michael or Emmanuel. In India it's Krishna, Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva. In Egypt it was Osiris, Set, Atum, Amun, Horus, Ra. I'll show you that. And I'll show you that the sun will have a different name depending on where it is around the 24-hour clock. When the sun is directly above you at 12 o'clock, it's Ra. When it's rising, it's Horus. When it's setting, it's Set. When it's below your feet at midnight, it's Osiris in the tomb, the black tomb of Saturn. So we'll get to that. The moon gives us the month, so does the God give us the day. Because the day comes from the word dio, dios in Latin. So it's the God of day. And the year, comes from yes, the sun. Minute comes from the moon. Hour comes from... Just switch those two letters around. That's all you've got to do. What hour is it? In other words, where is Horus? Where is Horus right now? What hour is it? The day and the year, all of the cycles that we live in are attributed to the timekeepers. I showed you how the moon comes from month, year comes from yes, the sun. So we have established that all our cycles, these boys and girls, these are the Elohim. Venus is a girl, Mercury is a girl, it's a hermaphrodite. The moon is a girl, he's a boy, he's a boy, he's a boy, and he's a boy, Mars. These are the only solid bodies in the solar system. These are all gas. These are gas giants, Uranus and Neptune, Pluto. Gas, solid. The one-eyed Woden, Zeus is always one-eyed, and he's the god of thunder. Why? Well, have a look at the Voyager images of Jupiter and look at the surface, and it's just chaos. It's electric chaos. It is an electric storm. There's billions of storms going on around its atmosphere all the time. They knew it was the god of thunder, because it is. He represents ether. He's the one that brings in the ether into our solar system. This one brings in the fire, the hydrogen. This is the fire guy. And the air is Venus. And the water is the moon. And the earth is Saturn. All of those planets are bringing in those four. They all harmonise with this. In fact, everything does. Your bodies do. Everything harmonises with the 7, Elohim, or the 12 potential energies. So what I'm going to be teaching now is I'm going to be teaching about the day, the year, and the great year. The great year, I'm going to be using a figure of 24,000 years. That's exactly how long it takes, in fact. That's 24,000 years, just like the 24 hours you have on your clock. Because it comes from that. Because the ancients knew that we lived in this great wheel. And how did they know that we lived in this great wheel? Well, it's simple. East is that way, there's west. Okay? I'm just going to turn it around a little bit so that you can see me pointing over here to the east and over there to the west. Okay? Now, when the sun rises in the east, it always rises in a 17-degree belt called the zodiac. The zodiac. That's how wide it is, and it's 30 degrees long. So the sun will always be, it's in Taurus at the moment, right? It's the 15th of May, so it'll be in Taurus for another 5 days. But it's always in this belt, and it's called Aphrodite's belt. In the Bible, it's called the Mazzaroth. But it's the zodiac, because the sun never leaves that belt. It's always there. When it rises this morning, if you could see the stars behind it, you'll see the bull. Okay? Even though there's been some processional slippage, and it's not exactly the bull, it's Aries. If you look up and you go, hang on, the sun's in Aries, it's not in Taurus. Why do they say it's in Aries? Well, because it's slipped out 30 degrees. With the zodiacal wheel, "12 signs of the zodiac" here. If you have Aries here and then Taurus here, the sun's actually here, it's not in Taurus. Because there's Pisces and there's Aquarius. We know we're going into the age of Aquarius. We've been in the age of Pisces for 2,000 years. Before that it was 2,000 years of Aries. Before that it was 2,000 years of Taurus in the Egyptian days. Because we're going backwards, we are going backwards through the 12 signs, and the sun stays in there for 2,000 years until it does a full circle, and that's 24,000 year great year. Now, when we look to the east, we see the sun rises in the east, sets in the west. The stars are doing the same thing. The zodiacal constellations are coming up in the east, and they go around and they set in the west. And so do so does the moon, and so do the 5 visible planets. But the day gives us night and day, night and darkness. And there already you see the enemies of mankind. Night. The night has always been an enemy of mankind. The year is divided between 2 polarities of summer and winter. Winter has always been an enemy of mankind. That's when you die. It's cold. Most people die in winter, in extreme weathers. Lack of food. Didn't put enough bread in the pantry. The house is covered in snow and it's there for 3 months. And you've only got a chimney to breathe with. And a little bit of wood to keep you warm. And some bread in the pantry, a bit of olive oil. Right, winter's a killer. These are the 2 enemies. And here we go from the golden age to the silver age to the bronze age to the iron age. The 4 ages. And I'll explain, this is beautiful. How do we get to the golden age? How come we've been in the iron age? How come? Well, we're going to know that. You're going to have that explained. But we need to focus on these 3. By knowing these 3 cycles, and only these 3 fundamental cycles, you will understand everything that's about to come, that I'm going to show you. So this is quite easy to understand. The day obviously is ruled by the god of day, that's the sun, as Plato said. We need a third thing in order for our sense of sight to be activated. They can't be activated without the sun. All the other senses don't need the sun. They don't need a third thing, was Plato's argument to Socrates. So this god of day, the sun, day comes from the word dies, God, in Latin. Year also comes from the name of the sun. Do you know how? You see the word yeah there? Well, it comes from the word yes, which comes from the word yes, which is the sun.
What about, I think Yahweh, is it? That the saying that Jesus Christ have a name belonging to Yahweh? That got something to do with that?
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
Yes. Yahweh, Jehovah.
Yeah.
But Jesus is specifically, that's the name of the sun. Just like the moon is called Luna. It's funny how people have not been taught to name the sun. The sun. It's got a name. In Hebrew it's Michael or Emmanuel. In India it's Krishna, Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva. In Egypt it was Osiris, Set, Atum, Amun, Horus, Ra. I'll show you that. And I'll show you that the sun will have a different name depending on where it is around the 24-hour clock. When the sun is directly above you at 12 o'clock, it's Ra. When it's rising, it's Horus. When it's setting, it's Set. When it's below your feet at midnight, it's Osiris in the tomb, the black tomb of Saturn. So we'll get to that.
This theology, this is mythology. Now, I get a lot of people that attack me because I only have a mythological, astrotheological, and allegorical perspective of the scriptures, and no historical Jesus. Now, I'm aware of many great writers that, like Yogananda, Paramhansa, that believed that Jesus actually lived. And he knows all of this. He knows all of this stuff. Rudolf Steiner. Guys of that caliber that were doing the same science as I'm doing, and yet they subscribe to a historical Jesus. Now, my greatest inspiration in occult wisdom is Thomas H. Burgoyne. And Thomas H. Burgoyne says that Jesus, the historical, was a merging of three characters. The Egyptian Osiris, Apollonius of Tyana, now forgive me if that spelling is wrong, and Jesus the Essene. You see, in the doctrine of the coming one, or in the doctrine of the avatar, Jesus is always coming. And as we go through these consciousness states, here is Gemini. This was the Garden of Eden 6,000 years ago. Then we fell into lust in the Taurian age. And then we got inspired to be martial, and we did a lot of killing. In the Greek days, Alexander going around conquering the world. Cyrus, Nebuchadnezzar, Sennacherib, Amenhotep. But that all happened here in Mars. And now we are here in the wealth and money of Jupiter, Zeus, Jesus. So as we go through these states of consciousness and we are being built up as we go, certain avatars and inspired ones are given to us. None of this, the mythological and astrotheological part of the Bible or part of this science, absolutely categorically excludes a historical Jesus. And so this is why some of these great teachers that I have, probably except for types like, Alvin Boyd Kuhn, who just did not subscribe at all to a historical Jesus, and many of the great writers do not subscribe at all to historical Jesus. But within this science and the doctrine of the coming one, every 600 years, the earth produces someone that turns up in history that symbolises perfectly the consciousness that has arrived. And that's how it happens. This is why we still hear talk about a Jesus. No, Freemasons believed that there was a Jesus, but this is Freemasonry. But they absolutely subscribe to a historical Jesus. Because if there was Jesus the Essene, Jesus ben Panthera, as Celsus tells us 2,000 years ago, well, he would have been someone who saved himself. These men saved themselves. They become avatars. Just a couple hundred years after Jesus, there was Akiba, the great Jewish rabbi, teacher, who ascended. Men ascend. We will ascend. But the earth and history does produce these holy men. And so this particular historical Jesus, if you must have a historical Jesus, was a good man that taught this. How do we know? Because he had 12 apostles. It was all about the zodiac. But please never be confused with the Jesus that is in this book. This reads like a myth, looks like a myth, therefore it is a myth. And a myth is not a story, hocus pocus. A myth is the greatest of truths. Truths that the profane can never grasp. That book is full of myths, beautiful myths, written in the skies by the language of God. Astrology. It's all about astrology. And so, I have never treated this subject in my presentations because this Jesus who saved himself like Buddha did, and I'll go through, we're going to go through this circle and we're going to find out how Buddha manifested. Mercury's Buddha many thousands of years ago, and how Jesus manifested as Zeus over here. And Muhammad manifested as Venus over here. We'll get into that. But that's all it means. Muhammad is all about Venus here in the age of Pisces, the latecomer, because he came 600 years exactly to the day after Jesus. Because there is always a 600-year period in the doctrine of the Avatar, in the doctrine of the Saviour, the coming one. That's what Jesus means. You, in Jesus. The I and the you means the coming one. Always he's coming. There are 7 heroes here. Perseus is here. And as this wheel goes around, it's always coming. There's always someone coming. Here is Bootes. Here is Leo and Regulus, the beautiful star. Here is the Cancer and the bark of Ra. Here is Pollux, where everybody's waiting for Pollux. Here comes Orion in Taurus. Here is Cassiopeia and Perseus, the ram. Here is Cephas, the one who has his foot on the North Pole, and he's always coming. Here is Aquarius, the saviour. Here is the goat, the saviour of Israel, the scapegoat. Here is Sagittarius, the centaur, coming to save us. There's always a saviour, always coming. This is the coming one. And so, as we go around in these periods, we can find all the characters. This is also why the Muslim Islamic flag has the crest of Venus on it, and it's green. But it happens to be Venus in this context, in Pisces. So Muhammad, they are Venetian. The Moors are Venetian. This Jesus here, who came and pretty much inherited the title of Messiah, because he ascended the oils, what happened was Jesus the priest merged with Christ the consciousness. And this happens in the body. So that's why this particular Jesus that turns up here had the Jupiterian, was the progeny of the planet Jupiter. The planets are actually bodies of angels. They are archangels. And they are beings of many, many angels. And when they turn up, they produce the right consciousness that someone in history turns up and inherits. It's pretty much like if you want to have a symbol of science, you would use the face of Einstein, wouldn't you? To be the definitive face of science. If you wanted to find the definitive face of the Renaissance, you would have the face of Leonardo da Vinci. Because Leonardo da Vinci was the symbol that 500 years ago that typified the Renaissance. So all you've got to do is use that face. Well, when you see faces of Jesus, you'll notice that it's the face of Jupiter, the jovial one. You see? It's just a symbol. They've just used a good man, a prophet, that many of the great researchers understand and put in its proper place, that it's just a man. It's just you. We are all those messiahs that came. And I'm going to go back and show all the messiahs that have come and show how they correspond with the planets in those signs. But eventually it will be you that is that Messiah. So here we've found Moses, the period of Moses, Mars, and also Abram. So Abram turned up, guys. Yeah, he turned up. And so did Moses. Abram was supposed to be here 4,000 years ago. Moses is here 1,500 years ago. Moses, when the 18th dynasty of Egypt was kicking butt. and there was the Amenhoteps and the tough Moseses. Ooh. Thoth and Moses, if it is an Egyptian word. Well, of course it is. It's all from Egypt. And Moses was learned in the wisdom of Egypt. The wisdom of Egypt. It's not the so-called wisdom of Egypt. It's truth, not the truth. You see, the churchgoers are living in the land of subjective truth. That's why Jehovah's Witnesses says, oh, I'm in the truth. They are enemies of truth by being in the truth, because it's the lie. It's the lie that they accept as their version of this, which is truth. It's their corrupted version. The priests don't teach you any of this. Before that was Venus. Venus is the ruler of Taurus, and the moon exalts. These were the sinners of Moses. Remember Moses climbed Mount Sinai, but he killed the bull. But see, that's where the word sinner comes from, anyone who follows the moon religion. So that prophet, whoever it was that turned up here, and that would have been, well, Hathor. See, Hathor was very popular here. This is Hathor. You got Abraham, Moses, Jesus, Peter and Paul, and Muhammad. Now you can go back and you can find them all. But this is how the theology works. As above, so below. This is why people cannot detach themselves from the historical Jesus. Oh, I need a historical Jesus. We don't need a historical Jesus. It's not needed at all. He was a saviour. He saved himself. Goodbye. We save ourselves. We become saviours. We become Jesuses. It's the story of us.
This is telling the story of what is in our bodies. And it tells the story of what is in the universe.